She believed she was beyond reproach, used to having influence, special treatment, and always having things her way. However, when she took out a stun gun and assaulted a royal guard, thinking he would collapse, she committed the gravest error of her life. The subsequent events shocked the whole audience into silence. This is the story of how it occurred. Before we go on, please tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Also, subscribe to the channel if you respect the royal guards. The crisp sound of expensive shoes rang out across the grounds of Buckingham Palace as Sarah Jones walked through the assembled group of visitors. Her smart suit, a dark grey skirt, and a coat over a clean white shirt indicated business influence, while her neatly styled brown hair and bright pink lipstick completed the appearance of a professional that she had worked hard for years to create. "Excuse me," she ordered, rather than asked, her voice having the practiced confidence of someone who was used to making company bosses do as she said. "Some of us have important things to do." She pushed past a group trying to take pictures, her work bag swinging near to a small child's head. The daylight reflected off her expensive bracelet as she looked at her watch, a present from her manager that she always let everyone know about. As a personal helper to John Smith, the head of Smith International, Sarah had become familiar with a degree of special treatment. Doors were held open for her, people moved aside, and usually the world changed itself to suit her needs. After all, she was not just an assistant, she controlled access to one of London's most influential business people. "This is silly," she mumbled, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Don't these people have anything to do, or do they just stand around all day looking at places?" Her neatly polished nails tapped on her bag, a worried action that showed the constant pressure beneath her calm appearance. A young mum, pulling her kids out of Sarah's way, received a particularly nasty look. "Keep your children under control," Sarah said sharply, adjusting her skirt carefully. "This isn't a play area." The mum's sorry smile only seemed to annoy her more, as though simple politeness was an insult to her high position. Sarah had just turned the corner of the palace area when she first saw him, the royal guard, standing straight and still. His bright red uniform was a strong contrast to the old stones behind him. Something about his stance, his steady control, seemed to draw her attention. Maybe it was how he stood there, completely calm despite the surrounding activity. Or maybe it was that, for the first time that day, she had met something that didn't straight away recognize her importance. Her eyes became smaller as she looked at his formal uniform, the shiny metal buttons, the tall bearskin hat. A small smile appeared on her perfectly made-up lips, the type of smile that had come before the firing of many workers who had not shown her the correct respect. "Well," she whispered, adjusting her coat carefully. "This should be fun." The sun made her shadow stretch across the stones as she began to walk towards the guard, her shoes hitting the ground with the sound of approaching trouble. She stopped a short distance from the guard, her head angled in careful thought. The watching visitors moved around them like water around rocks, some already noticing the developing tension and moving away slightly. "I saw that," she said suddenly, her voice loud enough to make people nearby look. "Don't act like you weren't staring." The guard stayed still, his eyes looking straight ahead with practiced control. Sarah's carefully shaped eyebrows came together, not used to being overlooked, especially by someone she thought was below her. "Excuse me," she said, moving closer, deliberately stepping into his view. "I'm talking to you. I saw you looking at me when I went by." The claim hung in the air, as false as her fake eyelashes, but used with the same care she employed to ruin careers back at Smith International. An older couple nearby looked at each other worriedly. The woman said something quietly to her husband, who shook his head slowly, his posture showing a military past. But Sarah was too focused on her aim to see the growing worry around her. "This is exactly the kind of bad behavior I've come to expect from ceremonial people," she carried on, her voice getting louder with practiced annoyance. "Standing here, looking at women as they go by, believing your uniform gives you some sort of protection. Each word was chosen with care, formed by years of making complaints that could destroy careers." The guard's calmness stayed unbroken, his posture excellent despite her claims. This only seemed to increase Sarah's growing frustration. She wasn't used to her words having no effect, like rain on stone. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, moving even closer, her costly perfume filling the area between them. "I am the personal assistant to John Smith himself. One word from me, and your bosses will be answering to people who really are important in this city." The sunlight had climbed higher, shining on the metal buttons on the guard's uniform. Their shine seemed to make fun of Sarah's attempts to frighten him, reflecting only her own increasingly annoyed face. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," she demanded, her voice taking on the tone she usually kept for unwanted phone calls from her manager's wife. "Or is that too much to ask from someone who's basically a living doll?" The guard's eyes stayed fixed forward, focused on some far-off point beyond the increasing scene. His control was clearly professional, the result of serious army training, but Sarah only saw refusal. In her world, anyone who didn't immediately do as she asked was committing a terrible error. "Still have nothing to say?" she asked. She opened her work bag, the material so good it likely cost more than the guard's earnings for a month. "Maybe we should record this behavior. I'm certain the palace would be very interested to learn about guards who spend their time bothering female visitors." The older man with the military appearance had moved closer now, his wife's hand holding his arm. Other visitors were slowing down, some stopping completely, drawn into the circle of Sarah's made-up drama. But like planets around a dark star, they kept their distance, sensing the dangerous energy coming from her stiff posture and tight jaw. "This is your last opportunity," she stated, her voice having the same tone she used when telling young workers they'd never work in the city again. "Admit your actions and say sorry, or this becomes a formal complaint." The warning hung in the air like a storm about to start, but the guard remained as unmoved as the palace walls behind him. Sarah's neatly polished nails pressed into her hands, making marks that matched the color of her expensive lipstick. In all her years of using power through being close to important people, she'd never met such complete resistance to her influence. It was more than just refusal. It was a challenge to everything she thought about how the world operated. Her eyes narrowed as she reached into her bag again, this time more purposefully. If authority wouldn't work, maybe it was time for a more hands-on method. "I want to speak with your boss now." Sarah's voice cut through the morning air. "Since you're obviously not capable of simple polite behavior, let's move this up the chain of command." She took out her phone, its fancy case shining in the sunlight. "I have the head of the police on quick dial. Shall we find out what he thinks about this situation?" The guard's calm stillness only served to increase her growing anger. His perfect posture and forward look felt like a personal insult to her authority, an authority that had grown large from years of controlling access to London's most important people. "You know," she said, moving around him like a hunter, her shoes hitting the stones with increasing force, "I've ended careers for much less than this. Just last week, I had a top manager removed from the company because he didn't stand up when I entered the meeting room." She stopped directly in front of him again. And he was actually important. The older soldier who'd been watching stepped forward, his posture showing years of army service. "Madam, maybe you should keep out of this." Sarah snapped, not even looking at him. "Unless you'd like to tell my manager why his morning meeting was delayed because of trouble by palace staff." The warning was empty. She had no meeting, no real reason to be there except to feed her own feeling of power. But threats had become her normal way of speaking. She moved closer to the guard, close enough that her breath moved the medal on his chest. "Let me tell you something." Her voice lowered to a threatening whisper. "I control who gets to see one of the most powerful men in London. People who annoy me usually find their lives becoming very difficult." The watching crowd had grown, making a loose ring around the developing situation. Parents moved their children away, while others watched with a mix of fear and interest. 2 palace security guards had noticed the disturbance, but were still working out what was happening from a distance. "Nothing? Still nothing?" Sarah's voice got louder, now with real anger. "What kind of man stands there and allows a woman to accuse him of bothering her without defending himself? Or is this what is seen as bravery in the army these days? Hiding behind rules?" The old soldier's wife had joined him now, both watching with the understanding of people who'd seen this type of behavior before. The woman said something quietly about service and honor, but Sarah was too focused on her target to hear. "I could end your career with one phone call," she went on, her calmness breaking more with each word that didn't get a reaction. "One call to the person in charge, and you'll be controlling traffic at building sites for the rest of your time in the army." She took out her phone again, fingers hovering over the buttons. "Shall we see if that's true?" The guard stayed still, but there was something in his posture now. Not fear or anger, but the kind of patience that comes from facing real dangers in real battles. This was a man who had likely seen action in war zones, who had faced enemies more threatening than a spoiled office worker with an exaggerated sense of importance. "This is exactly what's wrong with this nation," Sarah declared to her unwilling viewers. "We keep these old-fashioned traditions, these showy toys, while the real world moves on. In the time you've stood here acting like a statue, I've probably agreed deals worth more than your whole group's yearly budget." She reached into her bag again, this time taking out a small leather case. "Maybe we need to make this situation worse, make it impossible to overlook." Her fingers felt the edge of the case, something risky shining in her eyes. "One last chance, soldier. Acknowledge me, say sorry for your actions, and we can finish this in a professional way." The guard's silence felt like a solid thing now, a wall of control that her words couldn't get through. Sarah's hand tightened on the leather case, her knuckles becoming white with barely held-in anger. The sunlight had reached its full strength, making strong shadows across her face that seemed to show something bad beneath her calm exterior. "Very well," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. "Let's see how well your famous control stands up under real pressure." Her well-kept fingers began to open the case, showing the metal shine of something that had no place on palace property. "Last warning." Sarah's voice had changed now, something sharp and threatening that made several people watching step back. "You can't hide behind rules forever." The old couple had moved closer, sensing the increasing risk in Sarah's posture. The old soldier's face showed the seriousness of someone who'd seen that particular look before. The moment when feeling important turns into something more dangerous. "You know what your issue is?" Sarah's perfectly made-up lips curled into a nasty smile. "You believe this uniform, this show, makes you beyond criticism." She straightened her coat with her free hand, a movement meant to remind everyone of her own powerful position. "But let me explain something about influence. Real influence isn't about standing still and looking nice. It's about making things happen." She took out her phone again, this time very slowly. "Shall I ring the palace management? Or maybe we should go straight to the newspapers. Palace guard bothers female visitor. That would make quite a story, wouldn't it?" The threat hung in the air like fumes, unpleasant and poisonous. The guard's calmness stayed unbroken, but there was a slight tension in his posture now. Not fear, but the alert readiness of a trained soldier noticing approaching danger. His eyes stayed fixed forward, his stance perfect, even as Sarah's threats became more open. Nothing? She laughed, a harsh sound that had no humor. Still nothing. Even when I'm about to destroy your career, you stand there like a statue. Her spare hand went into a bag, fingers touching the leather case. Let's discover how well you keep that famous control when… She stopped, her hand meeting something else in her bag. The old soldier's wife saw her expression alter, saw something dark flash across her face. Dear, she whispered to her husband, perhaps we should tell security. But Sarah was already taking out her hand, leaving the phone in her bag instead. Her fingers had found something else. The stun gun she carried for safety in London's more dangerous areas, a present from her manager, along with a passing comment about how a woman in her position needed to be ready for anything. You know what's amusing? Her voice had lowered to almost a whisper, but it had a sharpness that made people nearby move back by instinct. In my world, when someone refuses to listen to their bosses, we have ways of making them take notice. The stun gun was small, dark grey, costly, like everything else in Sarah's life. She kept it hidden in her hand, but her stance had changed, becoming more threatening. The daylight shone on her diamond bracelet as she moved her weight, getting ready for something that the watching people couldn't yet see. I've handled difficult men before, she went on, moving slightly to the guard's side, as if planning to walk away. Men who believed their position, their uniform, their values made them safe from punishment. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Do you want to learn what happened to them? The old soldier had taken half a step forward, something in Sarah's tone setting off old warning bells. His wife's holding hand tightened on his arm, both of them noticing the look of someone about to do something they couldn't take back. This is your very final opportunity, Sarah declared, her voice having the certainty of someone who'd made a decision they couldn't change. Acknowledge me. Say sorry. Show some simple politeness. She waited, knowing no answer would come. No? Still nothing? Her fingers tightened around the stun gun, thumb pressing the switch with practiced ease. The small device started to make a noise, the sound hidden in the general sounds of the area. All right then. Let's see how well your training prepared you for this. At that moment, the guard's army training must have felt the coming attack. There was a slight tightening in his muscles, an almost unseen tensing beneath his formal uniform. But his training, his responsibility, kept him rooted in place, keeping his position even as danger came near. Sarah's next action was quick, accurate, and completely intentional. The stun gun came out from behind her back, like a snake attacking, its metal points looking for exposed skin beneath the thick red uniform. Her face showed no doubt, no regret, only the cold pleasure of someone used to making the world do as she wanted. The sunlight shone on the electricity as it jumped from the weapon, carrying with it not just power, but Sarah's built-up anger at being overlooked, at finding something her power couldn't change, at meeting a strength her wealth and contacts couldn't get past. The stun gun's points found their target, sending a lot of electricity through the guard's formal uniform. For a tiny part of a second, time seemed to stop, as Sarah's face showed a look of nasty satisfaction. But what occurred next would destroy her hopes completely. The guard's body became tense as the electricity went through him, his muscles tightening from the electric shock. The pain was instant and strong, like burning liquid going through his body. Yet, instead of falling to the ground as Sarah had expected, years of army training and strong self-control took over. His jaw tightened until muscles stood out like ropes under his skin, teeth gritting against the burning pain that threatened to defeat him. His feet, though shaking slightly, stayed firmly on the stones of the area, as if fixed there by something stronger than just physical strength. "Not so brave now, are you?" Sarah whispered, keeping the pressure of the stun gun, pushing it harder against his uniform as if trying to force her importance through his body. The weapon made a nasty noise, but her moment of success was about to end badly for her. With a control that went against both the electricity going through his body and normal human limits, the guard's hand, covered in a white glove, moved out fast like an attacking snake. His fingers found Sarah's wrist with perfect accuracy, grabbing it in a hold created by years of close fighting training. The action was smooth, careful, and very effective. Not the formal accuracy people took pictures of, but the dangerous skill of a soldier who had fought hand-to-hand in dangerous places. The stun gun fell to the floor with a metal sound, its electricity ending with a final angry flash. Sarah's eyes became wide in shock, her perfect makeup unable to hide the surprise that took all color from her face. The guard's grip wasn't harsh or hurtful, but it was as unmoving as the palace itself, his fingers using exactly the correct pressure to stop movement without causing harm. For the first time that day, maybe for the first time in her whole job, Sarah found herself completely unable to control the situation. "How dare you!" she shouted, her voice getting higher, making nearby birds fly away. She tried to pull away, her expensive shoes scraping on the old stones. "Do you realize who I—" "That's enough, madam." The guard's voice interrupted her loudly, like a sharp knife through soft material. Quiet, but with the clear authority of someone who had experienced gunfire and explosions. His eyes, when they finally looked at hers, held no anger or dislike, but something far more frightening, the steady power of a fighter who had chosen this exact time to break the rules. In those eyes, Sarah saw not the showy statue she'd been making fun of, but a man who had looked death in the face and hadn't moved. The older couple had hurried forward through the shocked crowd, the old soldier's face serious, recognizing a situation that needed quick action. His own army experience told him exactly what he was seeing. Not just an attack, but a moment when show gave way to the truth of what these guards really were, highly skilled combat soldiers. Palace security were already pushing through the gathering group, drawn by the noise and the clear electrical burst that every professional instantly knew as a weapon that had no place on palace grounds. Victoria struggled in the guard's hold, more and more desperate, her well-kept calm manner falling apart. Her hair, styled perfectly only minutes before, had broken free, and strands were over her face as she twisted, but she couldn't move in the firm hold. "Let me go of me. I'll have your job. It'll destroy your whole career." But her words were now empty, like her shoes on the stones. The stun gun lay on the ground, doing nothing, with smoke still coming out of it. The morning sun clearly showed the event, the shadows emphasizing the clear difference between how things looked and how they really were. The guard's uniform stayed perfect despite the attack, every button still shining, every fold still correct, showing the self-control that went much deeper than just show. Sarah's appearance had changed a lot. Her costly suit was twisted, her shirt had come loose, and her carefully put-on makeup was marked from trying to get free. The things from her bag were scattered on the stones like dropped leaves. Bank cards, expensive makeup, designer glasses, and various signs of wealth that suddenly seemed as useless as her attempts to scare people had been. "You have just attacked a member of His Majesty's military," the older soldier stated, his voice having years of army authority and the weight of justice about to be delivered. His medals shone in the sunlight as he moved forward, each one showing battles fought to protect the very values Sarah had just attacked with a forbidden weapon on palace grounds. Each word was like a judge's hammer, hitting home the seriousness of her actions and the severe results she was about to face. Palace security had made a barrier now, their faces showing the serious professionalism of men who knew exactly how bad this situation was. Their eyes saw every detail, the dropped weapon, the burnt mark on the guard's uniform, the clearly costly stun gun that indicated planning rather than a sudden act. But it was the guard himself, still keeping his perfect hold on Sarah's wrist, who was in charge of the moment, with the quiet authority of someone who had earned his place through difficult experiences rather than just show. In my time of service, his voice stayed steady, controlled, despite the remaining effects of the electric shock. I've faced fighters, survived bomb attacks, and lost friends in battle. And yet, somehow, you thought a stun gun would break what enemy bullets could not? Sarah's face twisted with anger, but beneath it, something new had appeared. Fear. Not of the guard's hold or the approaching police, but of the complete control in his voice, the firm authority that no amount of business power could match. I have medals for bravery under fire, he continued, each word careful, like a training instructor's command. My uniform has awards earned in real battles, not shows, and you believed your feeling of importance would be more than years of fighting experience? The old soldier stepped forward, his own army posture matching the guard's. 2 trips to a war zone, he stated, addressing Sarah with cold accuracy. That's what I notice in his stance. The type of self-control that comes from real work, not the false authority you've taken from your boss's position. Palace security had made a line now, keeping the increasing crowd at a safe distance while police officers hurried across the area. Sarah's struggles had stopped, her designer suit now as untidy as her calmness. The punishments will be serious, one of the security guards announced, holding up handcuffs. Bringing a forbidden weapon onto palace grounds, attacking a member of the military. He paused, looking at the stun gun still lying on the stones. The law takes these things very seriously. Do you have any idea what John Smith will do when he learns about this? Sarah's voice had become desperate. He'll have your whole team closed down. He'll— Mr. Smith, the guard interrupted, his voice having the same quiet authority. Worked with the army before building his business empire. Somehow I don't think he'll be happy about his helper attacking a soldier in uniform. The color left Sarah's face as this new truth became clear. All her borrowed influence, her assumed power, her carefully made connections, none of it could change what she'd just done. The thing about real power, the guard went on, finally letting go of her wrist as the police came to take her, is that it doesn't need to use electricity on people to prove itself. True authority is gained through service, giving things up, and steady dedication to duty ideas I think are unfamiliar to you. As the handcuffs closed, Sarah made one last attempt to save her position. This is all a mistake. I was protecting myself from being bothered. He was— The security cameras covering this area, the security guard cut in, have recorded everything. Every claim, every threat, and most importantly, your attack on a Queen's Guard without any reason. I advise you to use your right to stay silent before you make your situation even worse. The guard had returned to his post, his posture showing no sign of the attack he'd just experienced. His uniform stayed perfect, his stance excellent. Only the slightly darker color of his white gloves showed the force he had needed to use in holding Sarah. 8 years of service, he said, addressing not just Sarah, but the whole crowd. Teach you that real strength isn't about hurting others. It's about standing strong in your beliefs, even when challenged by those who think cruelty is power. As the police began to lead Sarah away, her expensive shoes tripping on the old stones, the old soldier's wife spoke up. Young lady, her voice had years of experience, you arrived here believing you could buy or force your way through life, as usual. Instead, you've learned that some things, respect, duty, honor, are beyond the reach of money or threats. Sarah's answer was a series of threats and claims that became quieter as she was led away, her carefully built world of borrowed power falling apart with each step. Behind her, the guard stood at his post, his shadow stretching across the area like a fixed reminder that some values stand firm, no matter what forces are against them. The old soldier and his wife stayed for a moment longer, looking at each other knowingly before leaving. "That, dear," the old soldier was heard saying to his wife, "is why these men stand guard, not just over buildings, but over values that some individuals may never grasp." What are your thoughts about this clash between feeling important and duty? Have you seen similar times where borrowed power failed against real strength? Share your opinions in the comments below. Remember to like this video if you believe in standing strong against disrespect, and subscribe to our channel for more important stories about the Royal Guards who are living symbols of respect and duty. Don't forget to press the bell button to never miss our daily posts.